Happy Saturday, everybody. This is a live emergency update on a Hurricane Beryl, which is heading toward the South Texas coastline. It looks like a landfall early Monday. Right now, somewhere between Corpus Christi and Matagorda appears to be the most likely intercept point. It's going to bring with it a dangerous inner core of the hurricane. I think that there is the potential that this could even reach major hurricane status prior to landfall. Right now, it's forecast to be a Category 1 to Category 2 hurricane, which still would be a life-threatening situation with flooding and a tornado outbreak along the front and right quadrants of that hurricane. But I also do believe that there is a dangerous inner core of a potentially major hurricane that could also be coming for Texas. And we are breaking down the latest forecast models here in this live update. We're also going to go live as we intercept this hurricane. We have a live emergency update here on Hurricane Beryl. It's a tropical storm right now, maximum sustained winds of 60 miles an hour, but you can tell that it's intensifying on satellite, has a lot of spiral banding, and I do think that the potential is there that this could rapidly intensify into a major hurricane. You remember Hurricane Harvey back in 2017? All the intensity models, everything, the National Hurricane Center was predicting a Category 1 at landfall, and it intensified into a Category 4. I'm not saying that this is going to do that, but the potential is there as it moves over the warm waters of the western Gulf of Mexico, and conditions are expected to become more favorable for rapid intensification as well. And it's favorable now for intensification. You've got a dry air trying to wrap around this compact tropical cyclone. You got a little bit of an upper level low over northern Mexico. You have a trough coming into the central U.S. That's helping to encourage this northward turn, along with the consolidation of an anticyclone over the southeastern U.S. And some great news. Gizmo just went to the bathroom this morning. We have secured a rental Dominator, and we are going to be heading off to the south. I'm going to give you the latest here on all of the forecast models. Here's the latest National Hurricane Center track for Beryl. It's going to continue off to the northwest. This track has been gradually gravitating toward the global models that have shown this northward turn for many days now. Many of the hurricane models took it over the Yucatan and then buried it into Mexico as a weaker storm. This one was slightly stronger and has taken this northward track. And we also have a bit of a trough that's going to be coming through the central U.S. that might even lead to tornadoes today across portions of southern Nebraska into northern Kansas. But that's going to cause this high pressure to consolidate over the southeastern U.S., and that's going to continue its northward turn. And hurricane watches are all the way up to near Galveston Bay now, basically from the Rio Grande. Some tropical storm warnings down there as well. But it looks like landfall early Monday, somewhere between Corpus and Matagorda appears likely. Matagorda Bay, Lavaca Bay. Some of those bays are just going to have that storm surge ripping into it. Down near Port Aransas, could have that dangerous storm surge flooding. Definitely heed those evacuation orders if you're out there and you hear those coming over your phone. Just know that this is going to be potentially a significant hurricane, potentially even a Category 3. The HWRF model, at least the 6Z run, we're going to look at the 12Z, of course, has a little bit further left of a track coming right in Port Aransas as a slightly weaker storm than it showed yesterday. Yesterday it showed it intensifying into a monster Category 3, a little bit closer to Port Lavaca. Some of the other models show landfall just a pinch off to the north, a little bit closer to Matagorda as well. Those barrier islands are going to be dangerous, though. There aren't really any roads north of Port Aransas Pass where you can access those islands out on the entrance of Matagorda Bay. But it is going to be absolutely life-threatening there Sunday, late Sunday, into Monday. And then this is going to migrate inland towards central Texas, bringing with it a tornado outbreak as well. And anywhere along the front and right quadrant of this hurricane, that's where you're going to have the most favorable low-level shear with storm motion to generate a tornado outbreak. I expect dozens of tornadoes with this hurricane. And here's the trough, kind of a flat trough coming through the central U.S. The jet stream is quite far south for this time of year. Normally it's a little bit further north in Canada during July, causing tornadoes up there. So it is a little bit surprising that you're getting that tornado threat today down in Kansas during July, but not unprecedented. But as this trough right here that is causing that high pressure to consolidate a bit over the southeastern U.S. and provide a little break that's causing that northward turn of Hurricane Beryl that we've been documenting here for some time. HWRF model shows about a 980 into upper 970s central pressure at landfall. But these barrier islands right here with that onshore flow, you're likely going to have tornado warnings too within this convective band as it comes ashore and for days after it makes landfall. Mega flood potential, of course. Although different than Harvey, right now the forecast models are showing this thing just cooking northeast. The potential is always there that trough ejects to the east and steering flow weakens and this tropical cyclone could just stall out. And that's when you get your rainfall totals that go from 12-inch totals, which still would cause major problems, up to that 30 to 40-inch range. And that's when it becomes a mega disaster like a Hurricane Florence, Hurricane Harvey, those tropical cyclones that are putting on the brakes. Even so, if you've got a landfall of a Category 1 to Category 3 hurricane, you're going to have that dangerous onshore flow and a tsunami-like wall of water that's going to go up and over these barrier islands. And you've got Corpus out here. You've got Aransas Pass very close. Up, you've got Matagorda Bay, Lavaca Bay off to the northeast. And that onshore flow is just going to pile that water into it. And all around the periphery of the bays, you're going to have life-threatening flooding as well. And there still is a chance that this thing could come in a little bit further right. And that's why those hurricane watches have been extended off to the northeast as well. Many of the hurricane models now are showing this intensifying into a Category 1. Remember Hurricane Harvey, it also showed this. And a lot of times these models don't do a very good job at showing the potential for rapid intensification. And I do think that it could happen with this storm as it lifts up through the western Gulf of Mexico on approach to Texas. Model tracks are definitely clustering over that landfall between Corpus Christi and Matagorda. You don't really have any tracks anymore coming as close to Houston, except with the global models. They still show that. But right now, looks like this is going to be coming just a little bit closer to Port Lavaca, a little bit north of Corpus, but still could easily swing left and impact Corpus head-on too. Inner core could certainly impact Corpus. Here's the HAFS-B model. And this shows you kind of what's anticipated with the intensification of Beryl. National Hurricane Center doesn't really think it's going to begin in earnest until tomorrow. And this model shows a 988 pressure by Sunday morning, tomorrow morning, starting to wrap that convection all the way around. You're going to have supercells just offshore. Those are going to be putting down water spouts out here for some of those oil rigs. You'll just see those wedges just racing by underneath textbook supercell structure too. Usually the supercell storms with these tropical cyclones are pretty well ventilated, and a lot of times they're quite visible. They have wall clouds, they're moving east to west, and you can definitely see these getting a little bit closer to the coastline just off Brownsville. Tomorrow, midday, you're going to start to see these supercell storms coming on shore down near Brownsville and up near Aransas, Port Aransas. And then tomorrow evening, Sunday evening, 984 central pressure. It really starts to gain better symmetry as the wind shear continues to relax on approach to South Texas. You got Lavaca Bay up a little bit further north. These are going to be supercell storms that on Sunday night into Monday morning, these are going to likely be producing tornadoes out near Lavaca Bay. And this thing now has a 979 central pressure by this time. This is the 12Z HAFS-B model, and it actually makes landfall in the low 970s, almost upper 960s. So there is definitely potential this could be a major hurricane. Very close to Aransas Pass, Rockport area. This barrier island is largely uninhabited, no roads out there, but definitely going to be a life-threatening situation there Sunday night into Monday morning. And then you're going to have these supercell storms ripping inland. And we're going to be covering the tornado threat as well for days after as this tropical cyclone comes inland. Look at all these tornadic supercells. And once they make landfall, they start to pull in that dry air into the circulation. You even get a little bit of an elevated mix layer that'll punch in, and that will lead to the development of instability and more favorable conditions for supercell storms, tornadoes. I'm expecting dozens of tornadoes potentially with Beryl as it comes in. And this new model here shows it coming in as a formidable hurricane, possibly even a major hurricane when it actually comes in. And tropicaltidbits.com is a great website too to visualize and access some of these incredible visualizations. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Welcome new Team Dominator members as well. How's it going, Barb Mac? Thanks everybody for tuning in. We have been live for about 10 minutes now. Now I want to pop back over to satellite imagery too. We were looking at some of these forecast models. I want to also look at the new HWRF model coming in. But right now it definitely does have potential to be even a major hurricane when it comes in at landfall. I also want to show you some of the precipitation totals. They're definitely coming up. The NAM model has probably the highest precipitation totals so far. Looks like we have some hot towers that are continuing near the center of Beryl. Look at the latest satellite imagery here, and it still is trying to intensify despite wind shear and dry air. And as it gets a little bit closer to Texas, those upper level conditions are only going to be more favorable. But you can see those little supercell storms near the center of the hurricane, some of those colder cloud tops. We call these hot towers because they are very effective releasers of latent heat, and they lead to surface pressure falls and also continued intensification of the tropical cyclone. The more convection you get near the center of these tropical cyclones, the more latent heat that's released, the more surface pressure falls that happen, and these things are just giant heat engines that spin out here. This one though is relatively small in scale. You can see the Brownsville area off to the northwest of it. That's the Mexico-Texas border, and you can definitely see those hot towers whipping around the center of the hurricane. The west side, you can see that supercell moving from north to south. It developed on the front right quadrant of that circulation, and now it's coming around the western eye wall of that hurricane. And you can definitely use microwave imagery as well to gain a little bit better of a look at the inner core. It obviously doesn't have a closed eye wall just yet. That'll probably happen as it gets a little bit closer. I bet tomorrow evening there could be some serious potential for more rapid initiation. But this has an open eye wall on the eastern side, and it has that deeper convection just whipping around the western eye wall right now. But you can see just a little bit of dry air getting pulled in on that eastern side. You can see this rope cloud too that is advancing east to west across the western Gulf of Mexico. Overall has a very favorable spin. Got local weatherman here. He's going to be chasing it with me.
You got it.
What do you think? You eating some of that pizza?
Yeah, I love cold pizza.
Yeah.
I don't mean to bomb your life, but
Looks like it could be a Category 3 even at landfall, don't you think?
how's it? Is it you're saying wind shear in front of it?
Right now, maybe a little bit, but that's going to relax. Wind shear's basically going to zero as it gets a little bit closer to the Texas coastline.
To the west side of it?
I don't think it's having any problem with wind shear right now. It looks to me like it's pretty formidable cyclone. Sometimes when these cyclones get into the Bay of Campeche, the shape of the coastline can even encourage intensification because of the cyclonic curvature to the low-level winds. This came off the northwestern side of the Yucatan Peninsula, and on visible satellite you can definitely see just a little bit of dry air coming in, but you've got that convection that's likely going to wrap all the way around this tropical cyclone. I think that tonight it's probably going to really start to intensify in earnest. Let's look at the aircraft recon here, showing you that 997 millibar pressure. Looks like the strongest wind is on the east side of this cyclone right now. There is that little upper level low too off to the west. But there you can see it sampling some of those lower pressures along the path. Looks like it might be weakening a little bit with time. With each pass, it seems like that pressure is coming up a little bit to maybe about 1,000 millibars. They're in the storm right now, making these passes through the center. Well, you got a couple low ones right there. But that's their 997 millibar low. You're not sure if they're actually in the centroid of that tropical cyclone either. It could certainly be intensifying still. And all of this data is inputted into the models This is a mission that was finished earlier, showing you that 999 millibar low. All of this data is inputted in those hurricane models that you see and improve its ability to resolve this hurricane. You don't want to use the NAM model, of course, for forecasting, but here's your trough coming in the center of the United States. It's that trough that could even lead to some tornado potential today across portions of southern Nebraska and into northern Kansas. We are going to be chasing this tropical cyclone, of course. There you can see the spin. This is vorticity. Looking at the spin, you got a vortmax dropping south through North Dakota. This is the 12Z initialized upper pattern, and you have this trough coming in through the central U.S. That causes the anticyclone to really consolidate across the southeastern U.S., and we get a weakness on the west side of the high. That's going to cause that hurricane to continue off to the northwest. You're looking at the GFS, 12Z GFS, this Saturday morning. This will probably be when that outer band really starts to arrive near the coastline. Might even be some tornadoes, water spouts associated with that. Look at it intensify here on the GFS model. That trough kind of gets a kicker system that comes in through the Dakotas, pinching off that anticyclone a little bit further west and consolidating this anticyclone over the southeastern U.S. And then the hurricane just follows the weakness right on the west side of that ridge. You can see the hurricane on the southern edge of the map. And you've got this trough coming in through the south, reinforcing this trough axis. And this helps to consolidate the high pressure over the southeastern U.S. And you get a weakness in the high. Usually these will help to block a hurricane from charging north. And so you had this belt of high pressure over the southern U.S. that helped maintain the westerly motion of the hurricane into the Yucatan. And then because of this trough coming in through the jet stream, which is pretty far south for this time of year, it consolidates the high pressure over the southeastern U.S. and then you'll bring Beryl northward into Texas, potentially as a powerful hurricane. And then you're going to transition into that ridge trough pattern, and I do think around July 12th you're going to probably see a reinvigoration of the severe weather across Alberta and Saskatchewan. But stepping forward with time, there is a chance that, well, it looks like that reinforcement of the trough is going to help to accelerate this system off to the northeast. You can see that trough coming way into the southern plains. And boy, it makes landfall very near Port Lavaca. That's the 12Z GFS. It's still a compact hurricane, but looks like that thing intensifies. Look at that compact area spin down there coming ashore. High pressure consolidates over the southeastern U.S., and that just pumps this northward. That's why we've seen this northward turn. And this trough coming in northwest flow could help to lift the system off to the northeast and maybe prevent a mega disaster from happening. But still, I think 10, 12, 14 inches of rainfall from this system and a tornado outbreak as it comes in. Usually when you get the accelerated mid and upper level flow at the trough like this, picking up a hurricane, it can actually increase and boost its ability to produce tornadoes, because you even get a little bit of a dry slot coming in, some mid-level drying. You get a little bit more favorable of a storm motion for tornadoes. You get greater instability, and these things can just become tornado factories as they move northeast, and eventually it gets picked up by the trough, lifts up through Arkansas, still probably producing tornadoes by this time too, near central, northeastern Arkansas, eventually up into Missouri. But look at that lobe of spin, just lifts rapidly off to the northeast, and it's going to bring that tornado threat along with it. But look at that compact core of the hurricane coming in to Texas. Right now it looks like Port Lavaca is going to be in big trouble. Hopefully it goes just to the east of Port Aransas and Corpus, but it's coming so close that I think that inner core comes so close to that portion that you're likely going to have that life-threatening surge coming up and over those barrier islands near Aransas Pass and also further off to the northeast. Look at that compact core of the hurricane coming in. This is the 12Z GFS, hot off the press. And it looks like it's going to move just to the east of Oklahoma. Otherwise, I was thinking Oklahoma could get some much needed rainfall from this ripper. Look at lifting off to the northeast, Hurricane Beryl. But it does hover into Monday afternoon just inland, and that is some pretty complex terrain. So if it heads a little bit further west in San Antonio, Austin would get into that big flooding right into Flash Flood Alley. Lifts a little bit further north up toward Waco. But this compact inner core is going to be associated with a major tornado threat on the north and the northeastern quadrant. And we're going to be chasing that tornado threat as it migrates inland, central Texas, heading off to the northeast, eventually up toward the Arklatex. But look at that ripping low-level jet right there. 60 knots of this tropical cyclone. You got very favorable wind shear on the northeastern quadrant of a hurricane like this, and you go over to the storm relative helicity, shows you exactly where that really strong low-level shear is going to be oriented. North and the front right quadrant, northern quadrants of that hurricane are going to be lifted up through central Texas, bringing with it some serious tornado potential. This is Monday night into early Tuesday, headed up toward the Arklatex. That tornado threat's going to be coming with it. Look at that, up toward Texarkana as well, eventually into southwestern Arkansas. Big frickin' problems coming in. Tornado outbreak, dozens of tornadoes, likely focused right along that gradient. This is basically going to be a stationary boundary that this hurricane in low is just going to travel right along, bringing with it tornado potential, flooding, lifting all the way to the northeast. This is midway on Tuesday that you're looking at. You have any updates?
No, right now, there's a decent hailstorm at least, just near Lexington, Kozad, Gothenburg, Nebraska.
Oh, up in Nebraska?
Yeah, golf balls.
Do they have a 5% tornado threat out for that today, or 2? Probably 2%.
Over 2.
NATOcast has 5% out. I'm talking to local man weather here. Yeah, Reed is not crazy, thank you.
We got MD for northwest Kansas right now too, in Nebraska.
2% tornado threat, folks. We're going to take a look now really quick at the map, and we are going to go over some of the geography where this comes in. Here's Port Aransas, Texas. Beautiful Port Aransas. You can take Highway 361 south. You don't want to be out here at the peak of the hurricane, though. Out on these barrier islands. Not sure if you can see my mouse or not. I know you can see it here. But this is Highway 361 going south. Well, we chased Hurricane Harvey in Rockport. We were in that hotel as it was collapsing all around us. I was even up in the second floor, walked up it, and you just saw straight down. The whole hotel came apart. The thing was wobbling back and forth. They ended up trying to evacuate us to a school in the height of that hurricane in the eye, and we ended up hiding out in the hotel just to ride out the backside of the hurricane in there, because we figured if it survived the front side, it would be okay for the backside, and it might even be more dangerous going to that school. But we came down 361 and just saw devastation, storm surge damage right along this barrier island. If this hurricane comes into Corpus, you're going to have a tsunami-like wall of water that comes up and over this barrier island, flooding the bays as well, just causing big frickin' problems out there. My buddy Nick knows somebody that has a house out here near Rockport. That's Corpus Christi Bay. Corpus Christi is right on the interior of that bay. If this comes in a little further south and you get that onshore flow into Corpus Bay, then Corpus Christi is going to be flooded out, and you're going to have absolutely big problems there in Corpus. But that would require this compact hurricane to come in right about here. And that would bring all that onshore flow into Port Aransas. This whole area would be flooded out. You'd have a tsunami-like wall of water that would come inland. Further north, up near Matagorda Island, San Jose Island, these areas are uninhabited. And I think that there are probably campers that can go out there. There's Rockport. That's where we rode out Hurricane Harvey. Came up and over this bridge, which was terrifying. deployed a probe on top of that bridge in the middle of a tornado warning with winds like 60 to 70 miles an hour. We ended up measuring like 140 mile per hour wind gusts with the probe deployed on that. Had a lot of funneling to unimpeded flow, but we had a tornado warning when we were deploying that probe outside of the car, standing on top of that bridge, water like hundreds of feet down below you. This road right here will surge out too. You may remember Mike Tice got in that accident as he was coming in late a little bit for Hurricane Harvey. Flew into Houston, ended up hydroplaning. Brett Adair picked him up on the side of the road as I was working with a crackhead out there to see if he could drive me north. Had a bunch of small engine parts in the back of the car. But here's Matagorda Bay into Lavaca Bay. And right now it looks like Matagorda Island is where this hurricane's going to come ashore, but it still could come anywhere from Corpus up toward Matagorda, even up toward Galveston Bay is included in that hurricane watch. But here's Matagorda Bay. These islands out here are largely uninhabited from what I'm seeing. But Port Lavaca is right at the mouth of Lavaca Bay. You're going to have a dangerous storm surge all around this. Palacios, Lavaca Bay, Palacios, south of Blessing there. You got Lake Austin, East Matagorda Bay. Beautiful fishing areas out here. A lot of marshland, though, and a lot of this area, at least out near the barrier, a lot of it's uninhabited. But you got Port Lavaca up here, right along the edge of Lavaca Bay. And when you get a hurricane coming in just to the southwest of that, and you get these ripping 100-plus mile-an-hour winds piling the water up, all along these bays is going to be flooded out. And so when we come down and chase the inner core of this hurricane, we are obviously going to try to cover that storm surge, the natural power of it, maybe by stilt home, maybe by rental car. But we also want to chase the tornado threat as this migrates inland. You're likely going to have dozens of tornadoes from a hurricane like this, including up near Victoria, off to the northeast of that, El Campo, Wharton, likely going to have major tornadoes as well. But if this comes a little bit closer to Lake Jackson, Houston area, then that's going to bring even worse impacts out near Galveston Island, Bolivar Peninsula. Galveston Bay would have stronger onshore flow and a lot more flooding around it. Houston, of course, would be impacted. But right now, it looks like it's going to be a little bit closer to San Jose Island, Matagorda Island, even Port Aransas could potentially be impacted by this. I want to show you some of the precip too by the new GFS model. There you can see that stripe of precip, 7 to 10 inches of rainfall, but the global models will underdo the total precipitation that a lot of times will come from these tropical cyclones with warm rain processes, a lot more uniform, smaller drop sizes. I think we'll probably be over a foot in terms of rainfall, but at least that trough helps this thing move along so you avoid those like 30 to 40 inch rainfall totals that will lead to a mega flood disaster. But there is a moderate risk now by the Weather Prediction Center for excessive rainfall and flash flooding right along that track. And I think that it's almost a certainty that this will also be extended up through the Arklatex. And right along the spine of it and the eastern gradient is where the tornado outbreak's likely to happen. Along and on the right side of that surface low as it passes inland. Look at the NAM model. The 12Z NAM model has about a foot of rainfall from where this thing comes in. You don't want to use the NAM model at least to really track tropical cyclone intensity, but I feel like it's a good model with rainfall QPF as well. At least does a little bit better than the global models, but definitely shows flooding rainfall with stalling out a little bit of Beryl just inland. That's why you get some of these higher totals near a foot. Look at the convective allowing 3 kilometer NAM has well over a foot. Maybe it does a little bit better with picking up on the warm rain processes as it comes in. Let's see where it takes the cyclone anyway, just for the hell of it. has it as a 986 just to the east of Corpus, so coming right in at Aransas Pass. That's where the NAM model has this coming in. 986 low. Yeah, I agree. The Icon model has done a great job with this one. National Hurricane Center's done a great job as well. I love tropical tidbits. Let's see what the H Mon has. 12Z H Mon. Does a pretty good job initializing it, even with those hot towers along the west side of the circulation here at the 12Z model run. Definitely has those towers kind of whipping down south along the western side of the inner core of this hurricane. Then it picks up a little bit on that dry slot coming in, opening up the center of the circulation from the east. Let's see what it does with the circulation over time now. Watch it organize. Eventually wraps that convection around by early Sunday, and then it begins to really intensify, dropping down to 989 millibar there by Sunday morning. It's going to have about 24 hours of intensification with it. This is Sunday afternoon. Obviously, we're going to have to be down there working the water spout threat right along the barrier islands here. 985, 982, and then it drops into the 70s, 970s. This is going to be a big problem here for Corpus as well, because you're going to have these northeasterly winds just piling up that water into Corpus Christi Bay. Aransas Pass would have major storm surge out there, big problems with a stilt home interceptor, and then you get into the eye right near Aransas Pass. Rockport gets into that eye as well. That's going to be a Monday morning, 7 a.m. arrival of that, 978 millibars now in the HMON. I'm going to connect with my buddy Nick and see what he's got for a house down there along the barrier islands. But up here in this main convective band, this is where you're going to have a lot of the tornado potential. So here you can see Aransas Pass right there. I'm not sure if you can see my pointer. You got Rockport just inland. But this main convective band, that's where the tornadoes that are going to focus. As this tropical cyclone comes inland, you're just going to continue this conveyor belt of supercell storms with tornadoes coming on shore throughout this location. Dozens of tornadoes are going to be possible along the front and northeastern quadrant of this tropical cyclone as it lifts off to the north. But there's the eye, and it does wrap that convection all the way around the center. We're about to drop south. We're about to head out of here in the rental dominator. Local man Weather and I, he stayed down after the end of this crazy tornado season and is still rocking it out here. I think that there's going to be more tornadoes, possibly dozens of tornadoes with this. Yeah, if your aunt is in Port Aransas in an RV, get him out of there, Indigo. It's definitely going to be a mandatory evacuated zone out there. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this live update. This is just a live update on our game plan for storm chasing it. We're going to be heading down there covering the inner core of the hurricane. We might even end up on one of those barrier islands, but don't do as we do. That's, we get in those dangerous locations. And you don't want to be in there, but you can definitely see this thing starting to organize. Looks like it's dropping into the upper 990s now. I'm going to take a look at the latest from the Hurricane Center. 997 still. That was as of 10 a.m. Central Time, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Moving off to the west-northwest at 12 miles an hour. $85 miles an hour now when it comes in 48 hours. I think 85 to 90. Looks like the National Hurricane Center hasn't really changed, but as of 10 a.m. Central Time, that convective burst is noted near the center of Beryl, the northwestern quadrant. Low-level center for the moment is no longer exposed. So it was exposed from the east, but those hot towers kind of wrapped around the west side. Tail Doppler suggests that the cyclone has become better aligned vertically, more vertically organized over the last couple of hours. You need a tropical cyclone to be more vertically lined to intensify. When they get tilted, that means that they're experiencing some wind shear. Less likely to get those pressure falls too when you have bursts of convection. Water vapor imagery shows a developing mid-level trough over the central U.S., opening a break in that ridge over Texas. That high pressure is going to consolidate over the southeastern U.S., and it's expected to turn northwest later today and then northward by 48 to 60 hours into that break, with the center making landfall along the Texas coast early Monday. And they do expect a recurvature off to the northeast because of that trough coming in from the northwest. Kind of a reinforcement of that trough helps to encourage that northeastward motion. It does remain in an area of 15 knots of southerly vertical shear, but it's also moving at roughly that speed. It does show that mid and upper level dry air over the southern semicircle of the cyclone, kind of wrapping that in off northern Mexico. That suggests that the convective burst will weaken later on today, and then after 24 hours, the shear is expected to diminish, and intensity guidance is in agreement that significant strengthening could occur and should. Based on this, the intensity forecast shows only modest strengthening during the first 24 hours, followed by intensification of hurricane strength before landfall. Peak intensity is based on the blend of the HWRF, HMON, HAFSB guidance, although the HAFSB guidance has it drop into near 970 millibars at landfall. So that's the latest with this hurricane. Everybody could come in a little bit stronger than some of the forecasts are showing, but more than likely a Cat 1, Cat 2, possibly a low-end Cat 3. But that's just because a lot of times the forecast models underestimate the rate of intensification that happens with these storms when they get into that favorable area. So be sure to hit that notification bell. We are going to be going live to chase this cyclone. Likely tomorrow afternoon we'll do a live chasing down the tornadoes and tornadic waterspouts as they approach, and then we'll be covering the inner core of this hurricane as it comes in, and then the tornado and flood threat as it lifts northward into central Texas. Thank you everybody for tuning into this weather report. Thank you Team Dominator subscribers for making these